And guess what? She's here to talk to us about the legal aspects of buying or selling property. Welcome back, Mekelia.
Thank you so much, Neilson. Thank you for having me on your program, and it's great to be back.
All right. So, of course, the last time we spoke, we spoke about, people buying property being one of the biggest investments that they'll ever make in their lifetime.
Yes.
Tell me about some of the legal aspects that people should look out for in buying a property.
Yes, thank you, Neilson. Great question. So, as an attorney at law and having that role as a realtor as well at Coldwell Banker Jamaica Realty, I get to play that dual role and have that advantage, whereas I will find the property for the client as well as take them through the legal process, even at a discount. And on the legal aspect of things, it's very important to get an attorney at law to advise you and to guide you, because it's very important to understand the terms of what you're getting yourself into. Of course, when an attorney at law is acting for the seller, he or she will prepare the agreement for sale and the transfer. And then that is then sent to the purchaser's attorney.
Okay.
Being that, provided that they have one, which is very important as well.
In some instances, we've seen where people try to save on costs. Would you advise that the same attorney act for both buyer and seller, or is it best that each have their own attorney?
That's an excellent question, Neilson. Well, actually, it is not a conflict of interest if the attorney discloses and gets the consent of both parties to act for both in a transaction, a single transaction.
Okay.
It's perfectly fine. However, there are times when people may not feel as though they're well represented on one half, maybe they feel as though there's a little bias. So it's always important to have a separate attorney to go through the documents and to ensure that your interests are protected. But there's nothing wrong with acting for both.
In looking at purchases, the transaction of buying, selling property, there are sometimes things which need to be cleared on the title.
Yes.
How important is it to have an attorney to ensure that your title is free and clear of encumbrances or whatever else?
Extremely important, Neilson, because a lot of times, people think that, I don't need a lawyer because I can read and just understand whatever it is. But an attorney at law, especially one who is experienced in conveyancing transactions, would know that when it comes down to restrictive covenants, that is the same attorney who will then have to make a certain application, if needs be, in the Supreme Court in order to either modify or discharge covenants. So it's very important to have an attorney at law. Sometimes it only takes a letter, some communication to the relevant entity. However, sometimes it's way more involved, and having an attorney at law protecting your interests will ensure a smoother process.
All right. Well, let's look at the ownership of property. And especially now that we're seeing people, especially when they were going through the NHT, persons joining together to make a purchase. Talk to me about the different legal tenants of tenancy in common, whatever it is.
The ownership,
ownership structures for property.
The most common one in Jamaica is the joint tenancy arrangement. You also have the tenancy in common. And the difference is that, as it relates to the joint tenancy arrangement, that is the doctrine of jus acrescendi, which means the right of survivorship. Therefore, if you and your sibling, for instance, own property together as joint tenants, it would have to be a case where one person sadly passes away, that you would then have the ownership. Absolutely. Whereas in contrast with the tenants in common, there is a set arrangement in terms of the percentage ownership in that property. For instance, a couple might purchase and a husband might put more than the wife. Maybe it will be a 60-40, 70-30. So that percentage there, it is clearer than in the tenancy.
And in that second instance, persons can will their portion of the property to somebody else.
I'm so happy that you mentioned that, because a lot of times people try to pass on the property via will, but they do not own absolutely. So they're not able to do so, and it's very important that you mention will, because a lot of Jamaicans fail to create a will. And having an attorney at law, consulting an attorney about these things will definitely help in a smoother process, especially when it comes on to probate and all of that. Whereas one who does not have a will, you know, you have to go through the grant of letters at administration, that application, which will take quite a number of time, you know, quite some years sometimes. Whereas in contrast, having a will save so much time.
Absolutely. All right. And there's the other case of two persons buying a property. Let's say somebody buy the property, whether he put his son on it, his daughter on it, his girlfriend on it. Is the putting of a name on the title gives that person right to the property?
Absolutely. And of course, it depends. Sometimes it is that you have transferred as a father. You might transfer your entire property to your son. However, some prefer to just simply add their name. And that is something that an attorney at law can do as well by an application to add a name to a title. So it really depends. But of course, having your name on a title, having ownership, meaning that you have an interest in that property as well. So you definitely have legal rights.
And one ought to ensure that in adding the name, you make sure you know whether it's tenancy in common or joint tenancy.
Absolutely, yes.
Because that then can determine the person's right
interest,
to
the particular
buy, sell,
interest. Exactly.
or to transact any business with the property.
Yes, it all comes down to that. All depends on that. That's true.
If let's say you've added a name to the title, and that person just suddenly decided, well, I want to sell my portion of the property. Can they do that?
Well, not where you have the tenancy, well, joint tenancy arrangement. What that might point to is the need to sever the title. And that is something that, of course, an attorney can guide the process. Quite involved. Doesn't take too long, but you can, depending on the agreement of the parties, because sometimes that is a subject of litigation when it comes on to division of property, especially in matrimonial proceedings.
Very, very, very interesting. What would you, as we look to wrap this show, what is there anything very strong point that you want to leave with the viewers in looking to buy a property? Why exactly they should talk to an attorney?
Very important, because a lot of times I understand the economic times is not what we desire. However, sometimes you try to save money but end up spending way more in the long run. So my advice is simple. Get an attorney when you're buying or selling property, because your interests will be better protected and the attorney will ensure that whoever is selling you the property is actually the owner, so that you avoid years of headache and litigation in court. So get an attorney.
I just like that last part that you touched in, especially in Jamaica. How important is it that we identify that the person actually selling, the vendor, has authority to sell?
Yes, and you know, it can be a simple trip to the titles office or online, $500 or so, Jamaican, don't quote me on it, to find out if the owner, the person purporting to be the owner rather, is actually the legal owner. Just look at the title will tell you, as well as matching the ID and so on. But a lot of people go into it and not even check those things. You know?
And the lawyer, the attorney can do a title search.
Absolutely, quick and easy.
All right, great, absolutely. That's why we have this program. Happy to have you back a second time talking to us. These are important things that people really need to know. Buying a property is a big, big investment. Take time, talk to your attorney. As we always say here on Let's Talk Stocks, we give you information to make better financial decisions. Come back with us tomorrow morning at 9. We'll have another informative program lined up for you.